Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Deal, where we discuss business, entrepreneurship, and commercial real estate. My name is Lacey Labs, and I'm here with my co-host, Laura Martin. In today's episode, we interview Kyle Matthews, an established business development leader and connector in Central PA. Kyle serves as the Director of Partnerships for Denim Coffee, building their wholesale business and connecting with business partners around the region. He previously served as the VP of Sales for CIO Mastermind in Denver, Colorado, and has served in other various business development and professional development roles. Tune into this episode to hear more about Kyle's journey, the business and entrepreneurial experience he shares, and what advice he would give to companies and leaders looking to develop and thriving organizations. Kyle Matthews, welcome to Beyond the Deal.
Great to be here, Lacey.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah. So let's just get started with you telling us a little bit about your background and how you got started in business.
Sure. What a wild ride. The entrepreneurship bug bit at a young age and hard. So I ended up starting my first business at 15. I ended up doing a high-end automotive detailing. And that went on to me building a small team of 5 guys that ended up paying for my college at Shippensburg. So the whole ship story, that's another story. Fantastic. But, that really laid the groundwork for some pretty incredible things down the road that I didn't even realize, right? I learned about cash flow when I was 16, right? What's going on here, right? I'm paying my guys weekly, but I have a contract that I'm getting paid monthly. So those are the types of things that a lot of business owners, they don't learn until they're 30, 40, 50, depending on the type of business
they should
and
teach
what
these
they're
things
getting into.
School and they do
they should. That's a whole nother podcast, right?
You can come back.
Absolutely. So I learned a lot there, ended up, doing some things in the corporate world. I was a Penske guy for a while, running a couple territories. And I saw that at least had enough foresight at this juncture to realize that my next step was not going to keep me happy, right? And I saw what it took to move forward in that organization and the sacrifices that would need to be made that were in conflict with some of my other goals and values. So I had a really cool opportunity to go out to Colorado and work with small business owners and help them really develop a robust business, a robust network, and help them get what they wanted out of the business. So I ended up doing business development for that group for probably about 7 years, and ended up beyond the business development working into a lot of the facilitation, which I really, really enjoyed the facilitation of that content. And led some networking groups out there.
I got to visit you at one of those actually
in
Colorado.
About that.
Yep, in 2014, I think it was.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't know that.
wild, wild ride through all of that. And then weaving some personal things into that too. Just went out for this wild west, experience, with my wife Christine. And ended up coming into some pretty crazy hardships. We actually lost 2 sons in that time, really late. And so quickly go from like, hey, this is the world's our oyster to, oh, now what? Right? And moving through that grief and being intentional. So hopefully, if there's anything that we can uncover in this podcast, it's there is no business in life. I would even say there is no balance, right? It's what does the integration look like? What am I focusing on at this present moment, and how do you keep things moving but also not sweep anything under the rug, right? Because I always make 2 promises about that. Anything swept under the rug, number 1, it's coming out. At some point, it's coming out. And number 2, it's going to be uglier than when you swept it under there in the first place, right? So working through that, the masterminds, working with small business owners, fantastic. Drinking wonderful cups of coffee all up and down the Front Range from Fort Collins down to the Springs. And I ended up building such a robust network that when I left there, I got to work with two wonderful Denver-based founders at the same time. I essentially started my own business as sales for hire, right? And I did what any good entrepreneur would do. I sat them both down at the same table and came up with an agreement to where I could work for both of them at the same time. They get me at a discount, I get the upside. So a couple different businesses there. One was a SaaS-based company, very cool, but it was transitioning from a train-the-trainer to a SaaS model. And then the other was a commercial cleaning business, which is some overlap there with the property management. You're certainly privy to all of the concerns that come up in that world.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how much fun that business would be. I was a little bit worried, right? Commercial cleaning is not sexy, but it's certainly lucrative. It's certainly necessary. And I got into that before anyone had ever heard what COVID was, right? So throughout this period where folks are like, hey, I'm hanging out on my couch, knocking out some emails, I'm like, I've never been busier in my life, right? So that was a wild ride. A buddy of mine had purchased that business, and we doubled that business in a little over 2 years. So that was enjoyable, wild, a lot of ups and downs. But then at that point, when just kind of tie the story back to personal. We were miraculously able to have some kids. So my first kiddo just turned 6. His name is Reese. And, what can you say, right? That's a miracle. That shakes things up. We were living the Colorado life. We were camping, off-roading, all the things, right? Love it. Miss it most days, right? And then when my daughter was born, Audrey, who's now 3, my wife was very gracious, knew how much I loved Colorado, but was like, hey, I need some support, right? My folks are here. The in-laws are here. It was time, right? So we made that transition back. I picked up some part-time work. I jumped back into the mastermind world, but online. That's when the connection was made to the fellows at Denim, who are also both ship grads. They had built an incredible foundation, but were so focused on the operations that the sales side had lagged behind. So there was a clear, opportunity to use the skill sets that I had acquired to jump in as the director of partnerships with Denim. So. Long-winded arc, hopefully capturing much of what you were looking for there. Yeah. So
you've done a lot of amazing things, Kyle. So thanks for sharing I know that was still very brief to cover the depth of stuff that you've done in business. For sure. So what kind of motivates you in the business world now? What direction are you looking at? What do you want? What are some of the sort of critical things you're looking for as you continue this journey of business and entrepreneurship and these different elements that have been part of your life since you were 15?
Sure. I think it's important to come back to, really doing the underlying work that allows you to stay in alignment. So, my purpose is to inspire others to live out a better story personally and professionally, right? So what's really fun about this role is I get to take someone's dream and maximize that and help them see something that they potentially didn't even see in their business, in their life. And what I'm able to do in this role is to not only amplify that for the business, for Denim, but also for all of our partners coming in. We do a really great job at taking someone from A to Z. Hey, I like coffee and I love my community. Okay, cool. We got you, right? Not only do we provide the beans, we're going to consult on the equipment, the layout, the the supporting systems and software that they'll need to be successful. So all sorts of tactical, practical, execution up through and including physically what they're going to need to make better coffee, right? Which is the whole, denim trademark. So that's fun. That's fully in alignment on all the levels there.
There's a lot of places that need better coffee.
I agree.
So true.
It's really like breakfast places. They usually have the worst coffee.
Yeah.
How about it?
It's terrible.
And breakfast.
I usually snap my own in. It's just
You know.
ridiculous, but
Side note, right? American breakfast, we need better protein.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know if this is the place, but I'm just going to throw that out there.
I'm big on
Right?
protein.
Yeah.
So like smoked turkey, right, would be a fantastic option, Throw some chicken in
if you
there.
go into a coffee place, pretty much all they offer that I've ever really seen is like carbs.
Yeah.
That's so
Maybe
true.
a piece of fruit.
You need some protein.
We gotta work on that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You like
Side project.
Coffee pairing with protein breakfast.
Excellent. Excellent.
I love
I
it.
do think
That'd be
that
fun.
Robert F. Kennedy's going to have more people thinking about what we
With
eat,
the whole
what
FDA
places
thing.
serve.
Yeah. It's interesting, right?
That's gonna be
Because
good for us.
politics is always just so muddy waters, especially when you look at how that incorporates with business and with personal. But to your point, Laura, I think that everybody can get behind healthier pursuit, regardless of what they're going
Just an
after. I am
awareness.
excited about that.
Yeah. But I was
Big
just
time.
in Italy, and they give you pastries for breakfast, and you can't even get dinner reservations till 7:30 at night.
Right.
You drink too much, you eat too much, and you don't gain a pound. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm actually behind seeing what we can do to make things better for our kids. And
Yeah, I agree.
so
Yeah,
anyway,
for sure.
What's the foundation, right? It's like values, undergird how we move through the world, personally and professionally. Culture is going to undergird, how our companies operate if those values are widely spread and known throughout the organization. And really underneath that, health is a foundational piece. And if there's cracks in that foundation, everything else comes to a pretty rapid halt.
And I feel like, people really need a faith. But I also think if you're not healthy, you don't really have much.
Yeah.
If you don't feel good or
Well, I
pain
think
or
it's got to be holistic, right?
Yeah.
So you can fad diet or you can go hard on the gym, but if you're not looking at the whole picture and saying where's my mental health? Am I getting the right nutritional balance? Am I getting my body moving? Am I doing all those things harmoniously in a way that works together and develops each other, right? When do you eat your protein based on when you worked out? And all those things are just these factors that are easy to just
She's very
not do.
educational. If you have questions, she's got the answers. Yeah.
Lacey knows. Yeah, she knows
does.
what's up. You got to
does.
stay fit.
Yeah.
And
You can't believe how much this girl eats.
I do.
I eat so much less than you, and you're like this big.
It's all about the metabolic system, Laura. We could have a whole podcast
There
on
you
the
go.
metabolic
Listen, we'll
system.
come
All right.
back.
Back to you.
Join us next week for health tips from Lacey and Kyle. There you go.
Yes.
You guys, I'll interview you too.
Yeah, perfect.
All right.
That'd be fun.
Make it.
Oh my gosh.
We'll make it happen.
All right. Sorry, I took us down.
Maybe that can be a January one. We'll start the new year with
That's a good
health
idea.
tips.
And we can
podcast.
argue about the pros and cons of resolutions.
And I
Perfect.
like doing things outside the box, so that would work for me.
Yeah.
So.
Excellent.
Well, talking about health, the health of business cultures can kind of be a tough thing. Cultures, how the business runs, cash flow.
Yes.
What have you seen be some of the critical pieces of success for startups and small businesses?
Sure. The business owner needs to look in between their own two ears.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, what do I mean by that? Number one, self-awareness, right? The whole joke about self-awareness, we're not.
Yeah.
Right? So we can do some work in that area. But we also need other individuals in our life that we respect. And we need to surround ourselves not with yes men and women, but we need to surround individuals. Like in my own life, here's how I've framed it. I want to surround myself with individuals who are going to call me on my story so that if I'm not acting in accordance to my values, they're going to call me out and say, hey, Kyle, when you did X, Y, Z, how does that stack up against how you say you live or how you say you want to live? And I think that's really important. So that's maybe the more, meta piece to this puzzle. But beyond that, there's certainly a strong argument for being in a mastermind, being surrounded by fresh ideas, reading different thoughts that are going to allow your brain to chew on substantive ideas that allow for generative and creative forward thinking versus getting stuck in potentially believing some lies that we have, or getting high on our own supply, thinking that our stuff is the best versus allowing it to be battered by the world and get real feedback.
We all do need truth tellers in our lives.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
So, what sort of topics would you say? You said self-awareness. But I'm guessing there's probably some practical business knowledge too. So with the mastermind pieces, what sort of elements do you guys usually, have you looked at, or do you usually pull up and say, hey, you're a business owner, you're a startup. Here's some check boxes. Let's go through this list.
Sure.
What hits the top of that list?
Sure. Well, classic, right? He who aims at nothing hits it every time.
Right.
Right. So even just a basic, strategic layout of what's coming down the pike. And then, love them or hate them, classic Mark Cuban, sales, and I'm paraphrasing, sales, cures a multitude of ills, right? You got to sell something. And so I would say that all leads to this idea of a team. You need to have a team, whether they're physically with you in the office, or now we have the ability for a whole host of part-time additions to the business, whether those are local or virtual, and really understanding what those individuals bring to the table that you may not have in your own skill set. So of course that requires understanding what those things are in your skill set, right? So I don't know if that quite answered.
Yeah. I think as a business owner too, like I'll sit and evaluate our team, which has been together for
almost 2 years.
Is it just 2?
It'll be
3.
Devin and I it'll be 2 at the early.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It feels like 3. But I look at everyone has like a unique role, and they all have a place there.
Yes.
When you evaluate, because we're probably top heavy on admin, but you need it. Like what we have, we need.
Right.
So I've reviewed it, and everyone I think has to do it. You have to review it.
Yeah.
And I was at a conference last week, and they were very big on. It was a commercial real estate conference.
Sure.
But there were like 400 people there, and it was crazy. It was amazing.
I wanted to ask you what your takeaway was.
We've all been asked.
If you can distill down, a few nuggets.
I will talk to you.
Okay.
A whole nother podcast. It was fantastic. Best conference I've ever been to. But they were very big on AI and virtual assistants.
Okay.
And I've done a little AI, not much. So anyway, it's just interesting how things are changing.
Brave new world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I don't really like change, but sometimes you do have to embrace it, or you get left behind.
Sure.
So
yeah,
it's a
change is a constant.
Yeah. So we try to do a lot of team stuff in the office. Like I do try to. What do you think? What would you do? Like, what do you suggest? I don't, or I just delegate. I trust you. You figure it out.
Right.
So
right. Well, I think that's a critical piece when it comes to getting input from the team. But also being the leader and needing to come up with a decision, right? And balancing these two seemingly competing ideas of getting all the ideas from the team and also needing to have a strong strategic vision that ultimately needs to pave the way for what's coming forward. And how do you share those things with the team? Because you can see the end, because you have that vision, you can endure the pain of what it takes to get there. So one of the things that an individual shared that really resonated with me is actually an entrepreneurial lawyer, so working with startup law and all that. But when it comes to compensation, the team needs to have a sightline to their comp, right? It's a reason why you can have all the fun benefits in the world, but if your hourly pay is not attractive, the other things are non-starters because they don't have the sightline. And I think that's important for a lot of business owners to realize that what motivates everyone is different. Right? Which could lead us down a whole other, rabbit hole of, some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by recognition, time, et cetera. And, as leaders, we need to be dynamic. We can't just put people in a box because
it's like kids.
At the end of the day,
they're all different.
Yeah. You can't parent everyone the same.
Different seasons, when you've got a young child at home, like my kids are in college. So what I needed when I was in your situation is so different than what I need now. So you do have to be flexible and try to be aware. I do feel like COVID helped in that way. I think
How so?
I think people are more willing to try to meet their team where they are and try to make things happen that you need to make your life work, to work with me.
Yes and no. I think we saw a big split, right? We saw two main responses. We saw the control response, which was the spyware on the computers and the keystroke trackers and this, that, and the other. And then we saw other folks that rose to a higher level of leadership, right? We really saw a leadership track and a management track, right? In the best and worst senses of the word. And what you saw was individuals that were in that management, they were stuck, they were being controlled. They stayed there for as long as they had to. They stayed there to take care of themselves and their family. And the second they had the opportunity to leave, they did. Do you hear about people tracking keystrokes anymore?
Yeah.
No.
I don't.
There's a couple. There's a couple companies in Central PA.
Is it typically big
Really?
companies though?
They're usually. I know a couple that aren't. I know a couple that aren't that big.
Wow.
We could talk offline,
Yeah.
but I know some people who've worked for them, and it's a culture killer.
Yeah.
It
And they do a lot of.
Because you don't
They do a
trust-
lot of other things to build their culture to balance it out, I think. But one of the jokes that one of the employees made is, how much free food and fun do you need to have to balance out the intensity of having every mouse movement,
and not
click,
feeling like people trust
keystroke.
you. It's a lack of
Right.
trust.
It is.
It
It
is.
is a lack of trust.
Yeah.
If I can't trust you, I wouldn't want to work with you.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
saying.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Trust
And
is
it's
huge.
instead of saying, hey, as an employee, you build some leadership over your area of work and show me what you're capable of. And, we'll see how it works out. Instead of giving that freedom and seeing where they go. And they might do some creative, amazing things you didn't enable them to do because you gave them a little bit of leeway.
Right.
And instead of that, it's, I need you to do these exact things in these timeframes. And when you're not, if you let your mouse go for more than a minute or two,
Yeah.
your
That wouldn't work
time
for me.
clock
It's
turns
wild.
off.
That would be a
Well,
that would
think
be a
about
killer
it, right?
for me.
Yeah.
What makes a leader so effective? They need white space time,
Right.
right?
You do.
You do.
Because otherwise you get stuck in that rut.
Yeah.
And so now
Yeah.
you've essentially done that to your entire team. You've stripped them of any creativity, one of the hallmarks of humanity. And when you think about where we're going, right, to your point, Laura, with the addition of AI and a lot of tasks becoming automated, our role, is to become many times, more human in the workplace. And so, with technology ramping up, what are we doing to also ramp up our relational skill set? And that's a key piece that I think is missing.
Yeah.
Because we're going to up these, key leadership ideas. We're going to read more. We're going to, we're going to have all of these noble pursuits. But at the end of the day, what are we doing to actually block and tackle some of these basic relational skill set pieces that many have not had based on their life experience, past trauma, you name it, right? And so I think that's a key piece that is going to be critical in high performing teams and organizations. We're already starting to see that now.
Yeah. Well, and like for our team, I feel like we've finally the last 2 years hit like the perfect team.
Nice.
I really do. Like I feel like we got the right people in the right seats. And I don't know that we're really lacking anything.
Yeah.
So, which is great.
That's fun.
Yeah, it is.
That's fun.
Yeah.
If you could look back through with now the knowledge that you have sitting here, right? What would you say is that nice, piece of information? They said, you know what? Here's something that helped me achieve the dream team, if you will.
I think, like with you, I think we got really lucky. We found you through Ellie Haneke, right?
Yeah.
And we had a couple people, and they were just, you could just tell they just weren't it. It's kind of like when you meet the right person, you just knew like she was the right person for that role.
Sure.
Because here we are. This is her brainchild.
That's fantastic.
It's very Jim Collins. Get the right people on the bus.
Yeah.
First.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Not
Good
perfect,
to great.
but we
classic.
Yeah. So Kai, I think you sort of hit this question a little bit into what you were just saying about AI and the relational capacity thing. But what are some of the big obstacles you're seeing businesses hit up against when whether they're in their early years building or just in general with the current, kind of cultural moment and things with AI happening and just our world now post-COVID? Where are the tension points and obstacles?
Yep. Again, you need to let the real world interact with your product or service, and you need to adjust accordingly, right? If you look in the rearview mirror, how many companies that are large and successful today are doing what they originally set out to do? Not many, right? So you need to have enough of that open-handed approach to to business. The other aspect is coming back to our strengths and weaknesses. If we're really good at something, when we do that too quickly or too much, we'll leave other pieces of our business in arrears. And that actually can become a distinct weakness if we don't balance that out. We need to, bring up the sales and the ops, and these things need to rise, at least at a similar pace. And that can quickly get us out of balance if we're not cognizant of those things.
Do you think those are usually areas of weakness? Like it's kind of a slow down and pull your weak areas up with you, or is it team members? Like what are usually the...
I would answer that, carefully in the sense that, when you look at the, I heard this from buddy of mine, Josh Allen Dykstra. I'm not sure what the study was, but essentially they took readers of all categories, and they took underperforming readers and middle of the road readers and exceptionally fast readers, and they all put them through the same amount of training. And what everyone expected was that the low performing readers would come up, things would kind of level out. Not the case, right? Both the underperforming and middle of the road readers improved a little bit, but the already fast readers improved exponentially, right? And so to answer that question with caveat, we should focus on the things that we do really well, right? So I'm not telling you to focus on those things that you don't do well, because the chances of you increasing those in an effective manner are slim. You're probably going to improve them, but that's not where you need to be spending your time. You need to stay in your lane, and you need to get help either from a systems system side and or actual individuals to help bring those pieces into the business.
Yeah.
So.
The other thing I see too is companies that don't stay in their lane.
Right.
They start buying wineries or like, and it just seems like sometimes it works, but sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, like Alex and Ani bracelets is a good example. I'm sure your wife would know what they are, but this lady from Rhode Island, it's my hometown.
Okay.
And
I'm originally from Connecticut myself.
I'm from Newport, Rhode Island. And she had this bracelet company for years, like 16 years. Then she went and bought a freaking mansion in Newport that needed renovated. Then she bought a winery. Then she bought all this, and then she went bankrupt. Alex went bankrupt. Like, how can that happen? Yeah. Too diversified and not doing what she knew well.
Right. Well, and I've seen situations like that go sideways, and I've also seen situations like that have been fantastic success stories because you have an incredibly talented entrepreneur that has built a team and has put the team in place and has had enough restraint to allow that to move forward on its own before moving on to the next project, right? So I think maybe that's the takeaway, right? You can move ahead and you can stay creative and you can do all the things, but if you try and do that alone, or if you try and jump to the next thing before the foundation has been laid on the previous item, chances are you're, at best leaving money on the table and at worst looking to see those things.
So that's probably the key. It goes back to the team, that can run your financials and advise you so you're not making these terrible choices.
Right. And then the team today too, I think it's important, for entrepreneurs to really look at the idea of the fact that team does not just mean internal, right? It can mean our tax professionals, right? Our cash flow specialists. Marketing can even be outsourced to a degree. So there's many different pieces that you can look at, and that can be tricky, especially when you trudge down the really traditional, whether it's a SBA track or this, that, write the business plan. And all those things are great. And also you can follow that right off a cliff if you're not careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I have a question. Any good books you recommend? Anything you've read that's been impactful in your life?
How much time do we have?
Maybe your top couple.
Yeah, sure.
I always love hearing what people are reading.
Yeah.
What they would recommend is like, you have to read this.
So a few, classics, I've really enjoyed, we'll start deep. Okay. The Three Marriages by David White. He's a poet primarily. And what he does so brilliantly is he will not only take incredible works from the past coupled with his own poems, but he will also dive into the stories of these iconic authors and what they were going through as they were writing these timeless pieces and craft a beautiful story that really, at least for me, allows me to take things that are here and put them out here so that I can spin them around and analyze. So the Three Marriages signifies the marriage to self, the marriage to significant other, and the marriage to profession. And
that's not where I thought that was going to go. I thought it would be all spiritual.
So it's not. Like he actually weaves in a lot of different religious pieces and texts and cultures, and it's just beautiful. I love how it allows me to think. There's some really deep stuff if someone wants to dive in. So the second book I would say is Rare Leadership by a guy by the name of Dr. Jim Wilder. Calls himself a neurotheologian. So using the latest in brain science, coupled with a strong biblical foundation, this guy has really touched on a couple of powerful leadership principles that, again, these aren't things you're just going to do. These are things you're really going to need to work on, thus the RARE acronym, right? But I'll share the first two in this RARE leadership acronym. The first one is the R is remain relational, right? Keep the people bigger than the problem. And then the second one, A, act like yourself, right? So, if somebody, on your team has something to bring to you, and they're maybe worried, right? Is Laura going to be the same individual, right? Yeah. And we've seen that. I'm sure each of us have stories in our own lives about leaders that, we need to kind of check. We need to look in the office, like, what are they doing today? Have they had their coffee, right? What's going on? And versus those leaders, I'll give a shout out really quick to the co-owner of Denim, Tony Deal. Guy's a rock star. Operationally, just gets it done. I can tell this guy anything. And I know that regardless of like, oh, hey, we lost this huge deal, or hey, monster partnership on the table, I know he's going to be steady. And that makes me want to tell him more, right? So that is a key piece of leadership, right? Maybe that's a good turnaround, right? Like, how does that play out in
I feel like I'm pretty steady. Right? I have a few crazy moments, but it's rare.
Well, we're human, right? At the end of the day, right?
At the sales meeting this week.
Nobody's perfect, but
you do a 360.
Yeah. I always say I'm good, but don't catch me in traffic because I'm originally from the East Coast.
According to my children, right? I honk the horn too much. That's
man.
Funny.
It's bad when you have my 6-year-old in the back. Just beep at him, Dad. No, son.
That's good.
Yeah, he's taking it in.
Oh man.
They do. They watch what we're doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
They help level us up, right? Yeah. Parenthood is a great you're either going to rise to that occasion or you're going to flop. But it's going to humble you either way.
Yep.
Yeah. But the greatest thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
My kids.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep, that's very true. All right, so swing back to Denim here for a minute.
Sure.
I got a question for you, Kyle.
Sure.
So you guys are doing a lot right now, and I know you've been a big piece of that, and Denim's as a brand and as a company has been for several years. New shop, new this.
Right. They've laid an incredible foundation.
Yeah, great stuff going on. What are you excited about that's coming out? What are some things you guys are doing right now that you're like, this is great business, this is great for these guys?
Yep.
Give us a little peek. What's exciting?
Absolutely, of course. Yeah. So when you look at the foundation that's been created, Matt and Tony really have built a business that's ready for taking on the challenges for the next 10, 20 years. Huge IMF roaster from Italy. We're utilizing 11,000 of a 33,000 square foot facility. So it's fun. This brings it back to commercial real estate, right? Yeah. It was an old ice factory in Chambersburg. And that was an upgrade from 400 square foot or so in the Thought Lot in Shippensburg. But because of that capacity and the ability, there's some folks that can do quality. There's some folks that can do quantity. Denim has uniquely positioned itself in the coffee world to do both, right? So that really allows me to go to anyone and forge partnerships, knowing that we've got the capacity to really take care of our partners at any scope, from, few bags a week, local church, they just want to upgrade their coffee to, hey, we are, we've got 200 franchisees across the country and we need coffee. Let's go. Right. And so for me, it's the ability to meet people where they're at and make sure that we have a proper plan for, sustainability and making sure that we're going to be able to help them get where they want to go and help them reach their business goals. And I think what's fun about that, even just for me personally, when I think back through life, where have some of my best moments been? And it's sharing a cup of coffee with friends, right? So, moments of beauty, are what I learned from Tony, and being able to experience that, right? That really is the foundational work in our personal lives, in our business lives, when we're in those mentor-mentee relationships. In my mind, it's all better over a good cup of coffee.
Right? It's got to be good coffee or none at all.
It's my hair.
Absolutely.
Oh, coffee is, and it's worldwide. We're not just talking about East Coast. We're not just talking about United States. We're talking about all over the world. Coffee is relational and a connection and ritual.
Big time.
And
there's a method to the madness there, right? Yeah. The reason for the growth is so that we get to a capacity where we can go direct to the farmers, because right now they're really getting the short end of the stick, even by fair trade standards. So if we're able to return some of that power dynamic to, we say the farmer, but realistically, that's a community, right? Yeah. And if you're able to reinvest in that community, everybody wins. Yeah. Because the velocity of the dollar there is going to have a huge impact. And then also here, it allows us to have the consistency to offer a similar product, year over year. Because again, we're in specialty grade coffee. Yeah. This is like wine, right? You're not guaranteed the same bean year over year. You're going to have those subtle varieties. Same thing in coffee. So it's a win all the way around. And that's where we're going.
Yeah. Love it. Well, we'll look forward to watching Denim do some cool things. I'm sure we'll see it. So they already are. But all right, I have 2 closer questions here for you, Kyle.
2?
Before we wrap up. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is just, what advice would you give to an entrepreneur or business owner? With some of the stuff that we've been talking about, there's been a lot of great content in here, but just if someone came up to you and asked, what advice would you give? What would you say to that person? What would you just encourage them with? What should they focus on? Yeah.
Do it.
Just go for it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
I wish I had known sooner, right? I didn't know, when I look for example, when I look at what happened in the automotive detailing world, I was charging $350 for, a full paint correction when that was blowing people's minds, right? Like the go-to was like $120, $150 for a full detail, right? So, and now when you look, you can't get a ceramic coating done for less than $900. Yeah. So when you see how that industry has progressed, along with some tangential industries like PPF, paint protection film, vinyl, stuff like that. Sure. It's wild, right? You got to jump in and figure it out. And that forward momentum, right, really allows you to get further up the hill so that you can see, so you actually have a vantage point to see what's possible and where you want to go. And you're going to meet the right people along the way if you're paying attention, right? So I'll leave that. There's an incredible group called Luke 10. It's actually where I received a lot of facilitator training, because what I witnessed there was the ability for constructive criticism to be given in a way that it was received joyfully by the other party, and the capacity in a group setting to share heavy emotions while allowing that individual to remain in control and call the shots. Beautiful. I could go down the road with that for quite some time. But in the interest of time, coming back to this aspect of radical attention paying. As you start this journey, pay attention. You're going to find out, if you're paying attention, who's moving through life abundantly versus with a scarcity mindset, right? Yeah. Who's learning, right? To take the Dr. Carol Dweck, the growth mindset, right? Who's growing, right? Who's for you when you're winning, right? Yeah. And that's in all aspects of life. But I would say in order to do that, you need to really capture all of those thoughts, right? Say what you will about his personal life, as we have come to learn it in hindsight. But Napoleon Hill wrote a book called Outwitting the Devil. And what's fun about this book is it was hidden. It was published in 2011, but it was written, I think it was like in the 30s, right? And so when you look at this book, they were scared to release this book. Hill's wife was scared, and I think the foundation was scared because the book throws stones at fear-based teachings, right? Both educational and religious fear-based teachings. But in that book, which if you're going to do it via Audible, because his interview with the devil through this thing, they pick an absolutely chilling voice for the devil, and it's fantastic. But the idea that we must have definiteness of purpose, right? And I don't know in my own experience if that's ever possible 100% of the time. Yeah. But if we can come back to that, if we can regain that clarity throughout our life, that definiteness of purpose will allow us the clarity to properly pay attention. And that's going to inform our decisions and take them in the proper direction. Because if not, the alternative, as Hill posits, we will be drifting, right? So that's the question I think we need to ask ourselves. There's a quote that comes back probably every 6 months and haunts me. You can only coast downhill. Don't that's coast good. For long.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really
probably
good.
it.
Yeah, that's good. Good advice. Yeah, thanks. Another book to add to our list.
I know.
There you go.
All right. Final question. This is the closer. We ask every person the same one. So if you could go back and start your career over, but kind of keep all this experience that you've had over the years, what would you do differently?
Yeah, I would shadow people. I would ask more questions. I would. I think I've received a really wonderful knowledge about different industries that are positioned in education as very static, when the reality is it's quite dynamic. For example, right? I was a big mock trial guy, loved it, right? I got to go in the courtroom, and it was fantastic. We ended up taking down a private school or a little public school. It was an audible gasp, as the verdict came out, fantastic. But in my limited understanding, I only thought that if you go to law school, you are either, on the prosecution side or the defense side. Family law? What is that?
Yeah.
Corporate law?
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship? I had no idea that you could go down all these unique rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And that's only a one example of everything else, right? Like, huge car guy. There is somebody at a large manufacturer that sits in front of a computer and determines what chime is going to go off when you leave your headlights on. Right? There was someone at a top paint manufacturer that figures out what the next season's trending colors are going to be. Yep. You truly can do any of these things. Mm-hmm. So that passion that you think, oh, there's no economic engine.
Maybe there is.
There very well could be, right? And so to be able to go all in on that, I think is freeing and beautiful. And we've been taught to not do that, right? We've been taught to do things that perhaps we're really good at, but that drain us, right? And that's ultimately, we see that, right? We see the people that have gone to the Big Four, and 5 years in, I'm out. Right. I'm gonna do anything. Right. I'm gonna buy a franchise. I'm gonna, go a completely different direction. I'm gonna be a consultant. Sure. But again, all things that are the opposite of allowing ourselves to truly follow what lights us up uniquely and purposefully.
That's important.
Yep. Love it. Thanks so much, Kyle. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. That was Kyle Matthews sharing his insights on business development and entrepreneurship. For more information on Kyle, Denim Coffee, or to learn more about SB and Lattice, click the links in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Deal.